Okay.
Hello.
Hi, how are you? Okay.
Awesome.
So today's daf is daf ayin, and we're starting from daf chav tesam base. So I'm just gonna be pretty straightforward. The Gemara today, Bez Hashem, and we'll try to accomplish ground. In the Mishnah, it says we know that if a Jew marries a bas Kohen loses her rights from eating truma from her family if she marries a Yisrael. That you know that. If they have a child from that union, so she doesn't go back, and her husband died, the marriage is over, but it's because she has a child with that Yisrael, that child stops her from eating truma. So the Mishnah said, Hoy Yisrael Shabo al Bas Kohen, if there was a Jew that raped or had an affair, let's put it that way, with a Bas Kohen, so no child was born, they're not married. The Mishnah says she could continue eating truma from her home. She's not married to the Yisrael. But Ibra, if she became pregnant, so then there's a possibility that in her stomach she's holding a Yisrael, right? That the Yisrael was the father of this kid. Loi toichel, she can't eat truma anymore. So the Gemara, because the pasuk says, if you have a child from that union, you can't eat truma anymore. So the Gemara says, "Kevin the Ibra loi toichel." The Gemara is stressing on how do you know. The Gemara is going to stress on Kivin the Ibro loy toichel. When you say that she became pregnant, she can't eat, right? Because she has a child from this union Yisrael that came on a bas Kohen. So even if before you know a pregnancy, let us always let us always be concerned that maybe she did become pregnant. Why do you say that if a Jew, Yisrael, had an affair with a bas Kohen, as soon as the affair is over, the next morning she could go back home and eat truma? Why? Maybe she became pregnant overnight. Now, with one sleepover, do you think she'll become pregnant? Yes. Miloi Tanan, we have this situation. The Mishnah says if two men are on their way to the wedding and they swapped wives by accident, right? So, and then we realized that the girls that was probably a Hasidic wedding, they were happening at the same night, and the women showed up to the wrong chasana hall. So then they figured out what went wrong. The next morning, mafrishin oisen gimel chadashin shemu mubarsen. You cause them, you don't let them be with their intended husband for 3 months because maybe she accidentally became pregnant from the overnight sleeping with the wrong person. And we have to determine whether she's pregnant and she has a mamzer inside of her. So why don't we say over here, if Yisrael has an affair with a bas Kohen, that she shouldn't go home right away and eat truma. Maybe she's actually pregnant. Answers the Gemara, Amar Rabba bar Avhuna, liyuchsen chashu, litruma loy chashu. Yuchsen, to find out if the child is a mamzer, yes, we tell them we want to determine, make sure she's not pregnant, or if she is, we want to determine if the kid is a mamzer. So then we tell you to wait 3 months. The truma loy chashu. We don't think about in truma that with one night she became pregnant. At one time she became pregnant. So therefore, right away she could go eat truma as long as you don't see her pregnant. Says the Gemara, the truma loy chashu. By truma, you're not extra strict. But Tanya, we learned in a brisa. A man, let's say, doesn't want his wife to fall to Yibam. He has no children, and he doesn't want his wife to fall to Yibam. So what does he do if he dies? So Hareze Gitach, he says, here's your get, but it should only take effect 1 hour before I die. So therefore, she's, let's say he lives months, an hour before he dies, that's when the get will take effect. The Brisa says, Asura lechel betruma miyad. She can't eat truma right away if her husband was a kohen, because maybe he's going to die right now, in this second, and you had to get from him, and you weren't supposed to eat truma. So we see that even by truma, we're always extra strict. So therefore, what the Gemara is saying over here is, why don't you extra strict when the Yisrael had an affair with a bas Kohen? Be extra strict that maybe she became pregnant and she should not go home right away and eat truma. Ella, says the Gemara, Amar Rabba bar Avhuna b'nesuin chashishu. When they're married, then we're extra strict with these situations to find out, is she pregnant. But if you know that the Yisrael had an affair with a bas Kohen, we assume that they did not get pregnant. Why? Biznus loy chashu. They weren't concerned about with znus that they became pregnant. Why? Because if she knows she's just having a one-night fling with this guy, so she'll do whatever she can not to become pregnant. So we're not concerned that she became pregnant. It's not in her interest to become pregnant. So that's why this Bas Kohen could go right home and eat truma again. So says the Gemara, uva nesuin mi chashashu. Is there a chashash of nesuin? In other words, that are they concerned at all? If they were married, you have to wait 3 months. You always say you have to wait 3 months as soon as you're married. Well, Tanya, we learned in a brisa, Bas Kohen shnisis li Yisrael. A Bas Kohen got married to a Yisrael. So at the night of the wedding, she can't eat truma anymore. That night, the next morning, vames, he died. So she didn't stay with him more than one night with this guy. The next morning, tevelis, she goes to the mikvah. If she was tamei, vaychelis betruma le'erev, she goes home, and that night she could start eating truma. What do you mean? She was married for one night, and we don't make her wait 3 months? Maybe she's got pregnant that night, and she's going to have a baby, and that will stop her from eating truma. And yet this brisa says that she could go home that night and eat truma. Amar Rav Chisda, that's correct. Tevelis vaychelis ad abarim yom. Till the first 40 days, she could eat truma. Why? If she didn't become pregnant from that one night fling, she didn't become pregnant. And what are you concerned? If she did become pregnant, the first 40 days of pregnancy, it's just water. It's not really, there's no child in there to stop her from eating truma. What stops a woman, a Bas Kohen, from eating truma if she has a child from the Yisrael? So the first 40 days, it's not a child enough to stop her from eating truma. Again, she has to stop after 40 days from eating truma. Amalei Abaye, so Abaye says, Ihachi, then how, if this is so, if your premise is correct, Ema Sefer, let's look at the end of the brisa. If you can see that she's pregnant, then she was not allowed to eat truma. She did an avera all the way back from the time that she ate truma. And therefore she would have to pay back all that she ate, because it turns out she was not allowed to eat truma and she has to pay keren and chaimish. So if that's the case, but you told me the first 40 days she is allowed to eat truma. And says the Gemara, my mukukelis adaboim. Mukukelis means up until the 40th day, she has to pay back what she overaged. Really, what the Chazal will tell a woman in such a situation, her husband died right after the wedding, is that she can eat truma for 40 days, but at the 40th day, she has to stop. And then we determine if she's pregnant or not. And if she ate after the 40 days and it turned out she was pregnant, then she has to pay back what she ate, be'isser. But prior to 40 days, all the previous eatings that she ate, there was no problem with that, because even if she was pregnant from that first night, the first 40 days of pregnancy, the kid is nothing. It's water in her system, and therefore she was allowed to eat truma. Nu Gemara, Itmar. This is the story about this guy that, in those days they used to give kedushin, which is they would get engaged. He would give her a ring or something, and then they would wait till a year and then go to the wedding. Okay, that's the way it was. So she hadn't been like an aces ish for a whole year, right? Today we do the whole thing together, erusin and chuppah in one shot. But this guy did like this. He went to his engagement girl and he had relations with her before the marriage. He couldn't wait. So Rav says a fascinating thing. Havolad mamza. If a child was born from that union, it's a mamza. Now, why? Because since we see that his, fiance is such a promiscuous lady, if she slept with him, she may have slept with other people. And therefore, we can assume that the Vlad is a mamza. Shmuel says, Havolad shtuki. It's not a real mamza, it's a doubtful mamza, which is in a way worse, because a mamza at least can get married to mamzeres. A suffix mamza, you're not sure, she can't marry a Yisrael or can't marry a mamza either. Anyway, that's Rava. So Amar Rava, and so there's going to be a machlokes Abaye and Rava how to explain Rav. How do you explain this woman? Maybe she only slept with her groom, or potential groom. How do you know she slept with other people? Amar Rava. So Rava explained, Mistavra Milsa the Rav, that Rav, who said that the child is a mamza, is the damya me'alma of Eloi damya me'alma basar didei shadina. When there are rumors that she slept with other people, along with rumors that she slept with her groom, so then we assume the Vlad is a mamzer. But if there's no rumors she slept with anybody else, then we assume that the child is a kosher child, that it was just from the sleeping with her orus, with the groom. Amar Rava said, where do I know that idea? The Tana, our Mishnah said, in the opposite case, where a Bas Yisrael had an affair with a Kohen. Okay, Bas Yisrael had an affair with a Kohen, and she became pregnant, and she gave birth to potentially a Kohen. So she wasn't really married. Now the Mishnah says, Yolda, she gave birth, she could eat truma. Hey, Kadami, what's the case? There was just an affair between a Kohen and a Bas Yisrael. So why should she eat? Maybe that kid is not even hers, because she's such a promiscuous lady. She slept with the Kohen, and maybe she slept with other people. There's rumors that she's one that sleeps around. Then Yolda, why should she be able to, if she gave birth, why do you assume that this child belonged to the Kohen, right? Why? Maybe the child belonged to somebody else who's non-Kohen, so she should not be allowed to eat truma. Elalav, our Mishnah must be talking about minei damya. There was rumors she slept with a Kohen. Everybody knows that. There are no rumors that she slept with other people. And therefore, Umah Hasam in the Mishnah, it's for her, where she's an unmarried, she's an unbetrothed woman, she has a prohibition to sleep with anybody. But if we know she slept with somebody, we assume that's the father. Hacha over here, most likely it's the father. The lahai isura, for her to sleep with somebody else, that would be an issa daraisha, because she's an eshes ish. She's actually a betrothed. In our Mishnah, in our discussion of Habar Rusasai, she was actually betrothed to this person, and therefore for her to sleep with somebody else is a issa daraisa ulahai hetera. And really, for her own groom, she's technically permitted. It's only asa drabana. So, like Kalshkein, certainly we're going to assume if there's no rumors she slept with somebody else, then we assume that the husband is the Kohen. Amalei Abaya said, I will tell you not true. Even if Abaya is very strict, he says, even if there's a rumor for him, and even if there's no rumor she slept with anybody else, and we find that she's pregnant, Rav would say, Havolad Mamza. The child is a Mamza. Why? My timer, the Amrina, because we say, Mida Afkra Nafshe Legabe Oris, since she was promiscuous to the Oris, Afkra Nashna Alma, she was promiscuous to other people, she slept with other people, and it was clandestine. So nobody knows about it. But still, we have a chashad on her, and that's why the child is a mamza. Umas Nisan. So then, how Mishnah? Why do we determine automatically that it is the Kohen is the father of this child? All he did was have an affair with a Bas Yisrael. How do you know it was the Kohen that's the dad? Because our Mishnah is talking about Shahoyin Shneim Chavushim Bebesu Asurim. They were both in jail. So there's only one person for her to sleep with, which is the Kohen. That's why the Mishnah discusses. That's why the Mishnah is certain that the child is considered a Kohen, and that's why she could eat. Others have another version of the machlokes. The Basrei Didei Shadinale. If he agreed and they both know that he slept with her, no matter what, everybody assumes that the Basrei Didei Shadinim. The father is the Orus. The child's not a mamza. If he says, I slept with her, and she said he slept with me, then the child is not a mamza. And what is the discussion? Arusha She'ibra, the betrothed woman that became pregnant, Rav Amavlad Mazza, Shmuel Amavlad Shtuki. Why did Rav say it's a Vlad mamza? In this version, Amar Rava says, Mistavra Milsa the Rav was talking about the Dloy Daimimine. There was no rumor that she slept with him. In fact, most likely, the discussion was he was on a business trip out of the country. And therefore, it's highly unlikely he snuck in and slept with her. The Daimim Alma. And there's rumors that she was sleeping around with other people. In that case, Rav said the Vlad's Mamza. So it's a very, strict case. A very, limited case where Rav would say the Vlad is a mamza. Avo, we go to Daf Ayin Amar Aleph. Daimim Minei, Afagav, the Daimim Alma. But if she has rumors she slept with her groom and she slept with other people, still, we assume the father of this child is the groom. We go after the father of the child, and we go after the groom, and the child is not a mamzer. Rava said, how do I know that? That even if there's rumors all around, you always assume that the groom is the father. The Ketani, our Mishnah says that the Bas Yisrael that had an affair with a Kohen, Yolder, she gives birth, Toichal, she could eat Truma. Hey Chadami, what's our Mishnah talking about? There are rumors that she slept with the Kohen, but no rumors that she slept with anybody else. So then, of course, that the father of this child is the Kohen. She's no rumors she slept with anybody else. Do you have to tell me that this woman can eat truma? I mean, it's almost certain that the father of this child is the Kohen. So certainly she could eat truma. Elalav, but it must be the dainin name me alma, that she had a rumor from someplace else also. And nevertheless, so there's rumors she slept with the Kohen. There's rumors that she slept with other people. We assume that the child is a Kohen. To sleep with anybody, it's Isser. Nevertheless, Basri Didei Shadinam. We say that the Kohen is the father because the Kohen says, I'm the father, and she's saying he's the father. So if they both agree, then that overrides any rumors to the contrary, and that the Kohen is the father. So she may not be married to him, but she has a son from him. Because she has a son from him, she can now eat Truma. But in our case, also, the Lahai Isura by the groom and sleeping with anybody else, the Lahai Isura, there's an Issa to sleep with anybody else, Lahai Hetera, but for the groom, possibly it's Mutam, in the Rabbanan, it's only Asa. So it's most likely, like Kolshkein, certainly that in that case, you'll always assume that the groom is the father. So it's a very, very limited case where Rav would say it's a mamzer. It's only if there's no rumors and he says, I didn't sleep with her, and there are rumors she slept with other people, then we assume that the Vlad is a mamzer. Amalei Abai said, La'olam ei melach, I will tell you even more stricter. Kol heiche d'damim alma afga d'damim minei, Amar Rav bad mamzer. The Mishnah that Rav would say that if there are rumors that he's the betrothed, the groom is the father, she slept with the groom, and there are rumors that she slept with other people, still Rav would say the Vlad's a mamzer. Why? Because, and even if she would say that I slept with him and he says I slept with her, and let's assume that I'm the father, Rav would say that the kid's a mamzer. Why? Because we don't trust her anymore. If she's sleeping around, then maybe somebody else is the father. Our Mishnah right away says that child is the son of the Kohen. There was no rumors. There's no rumors that she slept around, and there's no rumors she slept with the Kohen. No, all of a sudden she finds herself pregnant, and she says, I became pregnant from this Kohen, and the Kohen says, I became pregnant from her. That's how the whole secret got out. That's what our Mishnah is discussing. Okay, we go into other parts and we'll finish up the parak. Poisel Mishimbia, Evid, a slave that sleeps with a Bas Kohen. So now that Bas Kohen is banned from Truma for life. And what we saw yesterday, if there's a grandson, and this is the picture is that if you have a grandson that's a Kohen, that's an Evid, right? How do you have a grandson that's an Evid? Right over here, Kohen married a Bas Yisrael. And so now the Bas Yisrael can eat Truma. But they had a son, and that son married a maid. And that maid, and so that son, the grandson is an Evid, a slave. If the Kohen died and the son died, her son died, so she only has a grandson that's an Evid, a slave. Oh, but an Evid slave, there's no connection between the grandson and the grandmother. Therefore, she can no longer eat Truma if she has an Evid. How do you know that so basically what the Gemara wants to know, how do you know an Evid has no relations to her grandmother? So the Gemara says, my timer, what's the reason? If a man marries, an Evid Ivri marries a Shifcha, we learned in Parshas Mishpatim that the children, the Avodim, remain with the master. They don't go with the father. From there we see that an Evid has no relation to parents anymore. So therefore, that is not considered as if she has offspring from her original marriage to the Kohen. Just because she has a grandson, then that's an Evid. Mamzer, on the other hand, Poisel Michael. We learned that a Mamzer grandchild, let's say a Mamzer grandchild, which is the next case, is, in this case, as you see on the screen, Kohen Bas Yisrael, the grandson is a Mamzer, as long as she has something related from this relationship. So then the Mamzer will actually allow his grandmother to continue to eat Truma, because at one time she was married to the Kohen and she still has offspring from that Kohen. So now the Gemara says, how do you know that? We learned in the Brisa. Gezera ein lo. When do you lose the right to eat Truma? If she has no children. Ein li elazara, only if she has no children. But what happens if she has a grandson? How do you know that will allow her to continue to eat Truma? In other words, the Torah is telling you that make sure if she has no children or grandchildren, then she cannot eat Truma anymore. But as long as she has a grandchild, then she can continue to eat Truma. But maybe only a kosher grandchild, a normal Jewish grandchild, will allow her grandmother to eat Truma. Zera posel menayin. How do you know if the grandchild, the only remaining grandchild, is a mamzer? How do you know she can continue to eat Truma? Talmud loyme v'zera ein lo ayin lo. You research the whole matter. If there's any remnant of even a pasala child, that will give the grandmother the right to continue to eating Truma. Frag the Gemara, but didn't we use the word v'zera ein lo and v'zera ein lo to teach you that you look for grandchildren, not just for children? So you're trying to tell me two ideas from this pasuk. One, you look for grandchildren. Grandchildren are like children. And two, that even a grandchild that's a pasal, that can save the grandmother and allow the grandmother to continue eating truma. But the question is, how could you learn two drushes from one pasuk? Answers the Gemara, zera zara lo yitztachra. To be the grandchild, we don't need a pasuk to teach you that a grandchild is like a child, because b'nei bonim harei k'bonim. Grandchildren are like children. We have this a drasha from another place. So ki yitztachra zera pasal. We need the pasuk to teach you that if one of the children are zera pasal, then you don't. Then you can feed the grandmother. Amalei Resh Lakish Rabbi Yochanan. Kaman Rabbi Akiva. The Ama Yesh Mamzeh Mechai V'Lavim. The Gemara is just asking a side question. How did you have this case of a Bas Yisrael having a grandson as a mamzer, when her daughter in this picture married a slave? But that's only Isser Lav. There's no Karis in that. And only Rabbi Akiva holds even if there is no Issa Karis, you can create a mamzer. So would you say our Mishnah goes only according to Rabbi Akiva and not like the Rabbanan? So the Gemara says, Afila Teim Rabbanan. But Ovid, Kachavim, the Evid Moidu. The Rabbanan would agree that if a goy or an Evid has relations with a Jewish girl, the offspring, the result is a mamzer. A Bas Yisrael that has an affair with a goy or a slave and they have a child, Havod mamzer. The child is a mamzer. So maybe even the Rabbanan could be the author of our Mishnah. Again, I told you that this is not true. We don't hold that way, because this would be a big, big problem if you would say a goy that sleeps with a Jew and they have a child that the Vlad's a mamzer. We have often cases where they become balchuvas and things like that, knowing that one side is a Jew. So anyway, Kain Gadol Pamin Shapaisel, one more line. Tarabana Hare Kapanis Ben Buti Kuzish Machelenim Truma. She says, I would rather have a small child, a mamzer that could give me truma, than Kaparis Ben Biti Kaddish Pislainim in a truma. I wouldn't want to have this great grandchild who does not allow me to eat truma. That's just the last case in the Mishnah, where the Mishnah says that sometimes a woman, a Bas Kohen, so she wants to go home and eat truma, but because she has a grandson that's a Kohen Gadol, right? That's the only surviving relationship. That grandchild of Kohen Gadol, and the Kohen Gadol's grandfather was the Yisrael, that prevents her from going home from eating truma. So she has this grandson that's a Kohen Gadol that's stopping her from actually returning back to her home base, to her original home, to eat truma. So she's like saying, who needs this grandson that's such a Kohen Gadol? that she paisleni min hatruma, is stopping me from eat truma. Hadran alach almana. Let's go further. Ha'oral, somebody who's uncircumcised. V'chol hatmeim, and anybody who's tamei lo yochlu b'truma is not allowed to eat truma. And if a tamei eats truma, he gets even misa b'dei shemayim. But the Mishnah says nishayim ba'abdeim yochlu b'truma. The wife of a oral, the kohen who has a wife, an uncircumcised kohen has a wife, or a tamei kohen that has a wife, ba'abdeim, and they have slaves, yochlu b'truma, they could eat truma because they don't stop their wives from eating truma. They themselves can in 1 second become a circumcised. So therefore, they themselves are not allowed to eat truma, but their wives could eat truma. Now here, the Mishnah is going to discuss something very important, and that is this pasuk over here. There's a pasuk right over here in the Chumash, Parsha Kiseitze, Lo yovai petzuadaka krushavcha b'kal Hashem. Basically, what this pasuk says is that a petzuadaka and a krushavcha is not allowed to marry a Jewish girl. Now, what is a petzuadaka and a krushavcha? So what it really means is somebody who has their testes, basically, either it's cut, crushed, or severed, okay, or the organ is cut, crushed, or severed, or the spermatic cord, this cord that's holding up the testes. Basically, you need all three in order to produce sperm. Because this person who has this kind of injury that was done on purpose, bidei Adam, so therefore he's not allowed to marry Kahal Hashem. He's not allowed to marry a Jewish girl. And if he sleeps with a Jewish girl, that girl becomes a Zaina. And if it's a Kohen's wife, that girl cannot no longer eat truma. So that's what the Mishnah is saying. Pitzuadaka or krushavcha, if the Kohen is a pitzuadaka, has a krushavcha, has cut testes, okay, or cut organ. Hein bavdeim yarchleu. They and their servants can eat. But if they had slept with their wives, lo yaichlu, because it's an illegal marriage now. Once he becomes a petzuadaka, once he lost his male organ, the possibility of producing sperm, he's not allowed to eat truma. V'im lo yada. Let's say he's still married, but he didn't sleep with his wife, so he didn't make her into zayda. Mishnasa petzuadaka shavcha. Harei elichela, she can continue to eat truma. The Ezel Psudaka. What is Psudaka? It's an odd word. So Ptsua means a wound. Daka means crushed. It can mean both. Kol shenifzu habeitzim shlo. If one of the testes was, one of the eggs, the balls were cut, vafila achasman, even one of them renders this person not permitted to stay with his wife. Ukrus shavcha, what does it mean? Krus means his male organ severed. And therefore, he's spilling urine and he spills his sperm. Kol shenichras hagid. Now, it's cut the organ. If it was left over, if it got cut, let's say a piece of the organ fell off, but it's by the place of the mila, and a little part of the crown is still there, then it's not considered as if you call the krus shavcha, and therefore you're still kosher. We'll discuss all this about the anatomy of the male organ in the Gemara. Very, very important. I just want to point out to you that it's a question, if somebody has to go for radiation, and this causes him not to be sterile, what's the story with his wife? Can he stay with his wife? So these are big questions. Tanya, we learned in a brisa. Amar Rab Lazar said, if someone's circumcised, how do you know he's not allowed to eat truma? Shnema, the pasuk says, Toishav Sacha b'Pesach, v'nema Toishav Sacha b'Truma. Ma Toishav Sacha Oma b'Pesach oral asabai, af Toishav Sacha Oma b'Truma oral asabai. This is a simple gezera shava, which says like this. It says, B'chol zar lo yochel kodesh Toishav Sacha. It says the word Toishav Sacha by truma, and it also says by Carbon Pesach, Toisha v'Sachar. So what the Gemara is trying to say is that they're very similar in ideas. So just like by Carbon Pesach, as uncircumcised, and oral is not allowed to eat the Carbon Pesach, so also Truma, someone who's uncircumcised is not allowed to eat the carbon, is not allowed to eat Truma. Rabbi Kiva, I don't need it. There's a pasuk says, Ish Ish l'Rabbi Sa'oral. There's a pasuk that says, Ish Ish, which is this pasuk. This pasuk, Ish Ish Bizera Haram Bakachim Lo Yoichal. Ish Ish means Kachim Layachal means he's not allowed to eat truma. It has to be a full man, which means that he has to be somebody who's circumcised. That's how we darshan. That's Rabbi Kiva's Rasha. Omamar, we explained before. Reb Lezer says, Nema Taishav Sacha b'Pesach. It says the word Taishav Sacha by carbon Pesach. Nema Taishav Sacha b'Truma. Ma Taishav Sacha b'Pesach. Just like by a carbon Pesach, oral asaboy, an oral is not allowed to eat the carbon Pesach. After Taishav Sacha b'Truma, oral asaboy. So that's how you have a gezera shava. So the Gemara says mufneh. Mufneh means in order to make a gezera shava, they have to be extra. The ilav mufneh, if they're not extra, you can't just say what applies by carbon Pesach also applies by truma. And just like an oral can't eat carbon Pesach, he can't eat truma. I would say no. Ikala mifrach. I could ask you a question. Mala Pesach can chiyav lamish pigul nice of atomic. Carbon Pesach, you have strict laws about eating carbon Pesach and noisa, pigul, and all these things and tummy. So, but by truma, you don't have such a concept of pigul or noisa. You can eat truma all you want. So therefore, maybe oral would be permitted to eat truma. So therefore, in order for this to work, one of them has to be extra. So the Gemara says, yes, one of the taishav sacher is extra. Afnuya mufne. Hey mufna, which is extra? Either truma, would you say the pasuk that says, taishav v'sacher lo yoichal boy? It says by truma that a taishav and a sacher are not allowed to eat. What does it mean? Mitzrach tzrichi. I need the Torah to write taishav sacher by truma. Tanya, we learned to the Brisa, taishav zekonik in oilam, sacher zekonik in sham. What the pasuk means by taishav and sacher, that they're not allowed to eat truma, it's meaning an Evid Ivri, a kohen that owns an Evid Ivri, whether it's an Evid Ivri that's going to go free after 6 years, or an Evid Ivri that's supposed to go free forever after Yovel, both of them are not really belonging to him. So the Torah says that they're not like his possessions, they work for him. So they're like a hired worker. They can't eat truma. So therefore, that's why I need it. And now the pasuk, the Raisa continues. Let the Torah write that an Eved who's supposed to stay 50 years by the Kohen, he can't eat truma. And I will know that an Eved Ivri that's supposed to only stay 6 years can't eat truma. Why does the Torah have to write Toshav and Sacha? So the pasuk says, the Bryce says, either came or you said, I would have said if it wrote one word, that means I would think that the Evid Ivri that's only bought for a certain amount of years, that Evid Ivri can't eat truma. But if an Evid Ivri is supposed to stay forever till Jubilee, till Yovel, I would think that he could eat truma. That even though he's supposed to stay for many, many years, he's only an Evid Ivri, he's a Jewish slave. He doesn't really belong to the Kohen. Therefore, the Torah says he can't eat truma. So Toshav and Sacher that's written by truma is not extra. Ela the Pesach, what the Toshav and Sacher, and now by Pesach you have to hold on to it. Pesach it says Toshav and Sacher are allowed to eat carbon Pesach. So what are we talking about there? That they're not allowed to eat carbon Pesach. I'm sorry, they're not allowed to eat carbon Pesach. What does that mean? Hi Toshav and Sacher, the cost of Ramana Pesach Ma'anihu. What is the Toshav and Sacher by carbon Pesach telling you that they're not allowed to eat carbon Pesach? Would you say it's talking about an Evid Ivri? It means an Evid Ivri, like a hired Jewish help. And the Torah is telling you that if a man owns a hired Evid Ivri, that Evid Ivri doesn't eat the carbon Pesach. Just because he's a Toshav Sacher, he doesn't have to eat. He's exempt from eating carbon Pesach. He's a Jew. Well, Truma, we already told you by Truma he doesn't eat because he's not considered the possessions of its owner. He has his independent possession. He's independent. We go to Amud Beis. His master doesn't own him. Say the same thing over here. That his master doesn't own him. So what does it mean? Toshav v'sachir and not allowed to eat the carbon Pesach. Very different than what it means by truma. When it says Toshav v'sachir lo yochal truma, it means that a Jewish slave is not allowed to eat truma, although the master is a Kohen. By Toshav and Sachir, by carbon Pesach, it's teaching you that a guy who has a worker who's a guy should not eat the carbon Pesach. He's still a guy. But that is extra. And that's extra because I know already, called Ben Nechar, or anybody who's an oral is now to eat the Korban Pesach. Why do I need the pasuk Toisha v'Sacher to Toisha v'Sacher? So why do I need Toisha v'Sacher by Korban Pesach to teach you a goy can't eat Korban Pesach? I know it from elsewhere. El Lafnui, it's extra to keep it open so you can make a gezera shava from truma from Korban Pesach to truma, and say that just like an oral can't eat Korban Pesach, so also an oral can't eat truma. Now the Gemara continues just a few more lines here. But in order to make a gezera shava that's unrefutable, it has to be free from both sides, that both words are extra. And here, only one side is extra, the side that's on the Pesach side. So, mufna mitzad echad, v'shamina leila Rab Lazar, we heard from Rab Lazar, the Amma mufna mitzad echad l'meidin u'meshivim, that you could have a gezera shava that has a free word on one side, but still, if you have a question, you could question and break apart that gezera shava and say we don't that it's not an gezera shava. If you have a question, and here we have a question, Pesach seems to be more powerful than truma. And that's why oral is also. And what's extra? And you say you have a gezera shava. The gezera shava is only open from one side. It's not free from both sides. So you could ask a question and refute the whole gezera shava. Answers the Gemara. You're right. So Gemara says something fascinating. Gemara says something fascinating. And that is that we have two words that are extra. We have two words that are extra. One, Taishav and Sochir by Pesach. So therefore, since there are two words, we'll break them apart and say we'll put the word of one of them by Truma, and one will remain by Pesach. So now you'll have an extra word by Truma and an extra word by Pesach. So you have a gezera shava with both words are extra. Kiven de legufei letzarach. I don't need it. Both words I don't need by Korban Pesach. By Shadei Chad Alamed, put one of them by the student, Ushtei Chad Amalamed, and put one of them by the teacher. Pesach is the teacher, Truma is the student. Even Rab Lazar will agree that it's open from two sides and you could learn from it. One more piece, and then we'll stop. Now, if you're making a gezera shava and say all halachas that are by Pesach apply by Truma, so why don't we say like this? Ima Pesach, just like Korban Pesach, oinin osabai. If someone's an avel, he's not allowed to eat the Korban Pesach. Af Truma, oinin osabai. Why don't you say that by Truma, an avel should not eat the Truma? Because you have a gezera shava. All halachas that are by Pesach apply by Truma. Rabbi Yosef Achanina, Amakra, there's a pasuk that says v'chol zar, only somebody who's strange, a Yisrael, should not eat Truma. Zara samarkel chav, layaninas. Only somebody who's a Yisrael should not eat Truma, but somebody who's an Avel, a Kayin that's an Avel, could eat Truma. So why don't you say, so Gemara says, Ema v'laya reilis. Why don't we say, maybe the uncircumcised is not allowed to eat Truma? How do you know that? Maybe the pasuk saying that a Yisrael is not allowed to eat Truma, but somebody who's uncircumcised could eat Truma. So the Gemara says, but we have a gezera shava Taisha v'Sacha to Korban Pesach that teaches you that an oral cannot eat truma. Umara Isa. So the question is, you have what made you come to that conclusion? To say that on one hand, an oral is not allowed to eat truma, and on the other hand, an oinen, an oval could eat truma. So the Gemara says, Mistamer, we're going to go strict by Arelis. Havile Rabuye, to tell you that it's, to conclude it, that it's also to eat truma. Shekem Mekusa Maisa, Maisa Bugufai, Vanish Bukaris, Vyashnov Neadibo, Milas Harvavala of Mekavis. The Gemara just says that there are many things that make it not that Arelis are something that we should not be eating truma with, because it's you're missing something. He's missing something in his body. If you don't give yourself a bris, you get a karis. And it's a big mitzvah that was given before Matan Torah. And by Korban Pesach, even if your slaves are not have a bris milah, you can't eat truma. You can't eat Korban Pesach. So therefore, I chose that to include that there's an issa. So Gemara says one more line. Ad Rabbah, just the opposite. Aninas havilei buah shekain yeshtem b'chol shav and heges banashim and nashim ve'ein b'yad l'sakenis atzmoi. So the Gemara says hanach nefishan. In other words, you're right. Aninas, I have reasons to say aninas should be prohibited by truma, because any time a person can be an oinin and oval, and it applies by women and men, but still there are more reasons to say that arelis is more also to eat truma than to aninas. Rava finally says, what do you want to say? That arelis, uncircumcised, is permitted to eat truma. And what are you going to learn from Taishav and Sachir to teach you that just like an oinen can't eat carbon pesach, so he can't eat truma? The whole reason why you learn oinen from that can't eat carbon pesach, it's derived from somewhere else. Even carbon pesach, it has to derive it from Isa Sheni. So therefore, it's not a direct teacher. It's teaching you something derivative. So therefore, the Gemara remains by the conclusion that when it comes to arelis, uncircumcised, you're not allowed to eat truma. And how do you know that? You have a gezera shava from carbon pesach. Aninas is permitted to eat truma because there you have a pasuk that says that only a Jew can eat, or Yisrael can eat truma, but a kohen that's an avel could eat truma. Okay. We caught up a little bit.